Hey, welcome to P10C Talk, the show where we talk about the CZ P10C. I'm your host, Jason, and I don't really have any credentials for being that host, right? Other than I have a number of P10Cs. I've shot them near exclusively for the past 6+ years, and I really do love the platform. Hopefully, you've stumbled across some of my other videos on the P10C in the past, or some of my competition videos where you've seen me running a P10C. Tonight's episode is kind of a stretch. I mean, it's a stretch that we're even talking about it on P10C Talk, right? This is a P10F 45 auto. It is not a CZ P10C. The only thing these two firearms really share in common is the lack of a rear sight right now and sort of general aesthetics. There are a couple parts that are interchangeable, but it's very, very few. This is a bigger gun in every way. It's wider, right? The F is far taller than the C. It's longer. It's heavier. You know, this is the P10 she told you not to worry about. I've had a hard time connecting to this gun. Well, you know, Jason, why are you trying? Well, again, I'm in an experimentation phase, and this isn't the only like side gig I've taken either. I'm currently trying to finish out this LTT RDO as well as a 92XI Squalo, so it's getting a little Italian American over here. But but this is kind of where I've landed on the immediate future for experimentation, because it represents a division I've never really competed in the International Defensive Pistol Association, or IDPA. The Custom Defensive Pistol Division in IDPA is strictly 45 caliber. And so, having never shot in that division and not having a competition-worthy 1911 around, I thought it might be neat, since I have won my way to master classification in 4 different divisions using a P10C. I thought it might be nice to try it again with, you know, a family member. So that's really the impetus behind this being on the table. But the conversation tonight is really, I don't know, it's related to some of the struggles that I've had competing with this firearm over my P10C, because there are enough differences that, you know, a lot of the benefit you might bring to the table with a great deal of experience behind this platform isn't really the benefit you'd think it would be transitioning over to this one, right? I mean, because the dimensions are all, I mean, yes, the controls are all the same. The experience is pretty much the same in broad strokes. The dimensions are wildly different. And so all the reps that you've earned on a P10C doesn't necessarily buy you anything when going to a P10F, especially in 45. Maybe in 9mm, it's a little bit, you know, it's a little bit more of the same. One of the dimensions that I struggle with, and really the only one that I'm struggling with, is, that's not entirely true, but the one we're going to talk about right now is just the overall height of the firearm, right? One of the things that I loved about the P10C is where I index my reload at, right? So this is a clear gun, just so everybody can see. Not clean, but clear. This long grip makes me feel like I'm just sort of out in space, right? Like I need to install some sort of tractor beam to get the magazine in there, and I struggle. Now, I haven't done a lot of reps of dry fire. I haven't done a lot of reps of competitive reps yet either, and I'm sure I will train that impulse out. But right now, reloading this firearm out in space is an alien thing, and I struggle with it every single time. Like, maybe there's a couple times I haven't, but typically speaking, one reload out of every stage is bumbled to some degree, sometimes all of them, and I'm getting kind of tired of it. Okay, yes. How do I fix it? Two ways. The first is reps, right? And that's the natural way. That's the way I would recommend everybody on earth to solve manipulation issues. Put in the reps in dry fire, put in the reps on the range, give yourself a little bit of grace with any incompatibility with prehistory and current, you know, the current effort when you change things up, right? And start rewarding yourself for the successes that you do have rather than focusing on the trouble that you experience. Yada, yada, yada. That's all true, and I should take my own advice in that regard, for sure. However, I'm also so in love with the P10C and not so in love with the F that my mind starts thinking weird things, right? So let me grab, this is an IDPA box. So the way IDPA works is that the equipment you use has to fit inside a box that's specific to the division you're going to compete in. And it requires that you have a magazine in as well. Now, this one doesn't have a rear sight in it. We'll get to that in a second because that's the real reason it's on the table right now. And the P10F, as you can see, unless you get a really tall sight, it fits with no real problem, okay? But this is a light gun. The division is dominated by high-end 1911s, right? The guys who are really cranking out winning performances in CDP are doing it with custom 1911s. That's what the division was intended to be, right? It's the Wilson Special as far as I'm concerned. Go buy fancy 1911 like a Wilson Combat, like a Nighthawk, like any number of others that are out there, and or have your your Colt, your Dan Wesson, have it, or whatever, Springfield, have it tuned up, bring it to CDP and rock it out. Those are all like 43-ounce guns, and that's the maximum weight a firearm in this division can be, I think. I think it's 43. I'll have to double check. This is like a way lighter pistol, right? And so one of the things I would like to do is run a light on it. Well, you put a light on the P10F, and now it no longer fits in the box. To get it to fit, I could do it with a TLR1, but I don't have a holster for TLR1. I do have a holster that'll work with a 300 Surefire. So you put this on, just for sake, show and tell wise. It doesn't fit, right? It doesn't fit in the box. Okay, so that fact, along with my general distaste for how long this grip is, I've got in my head that like I could take, and I've done some measuring, right? Let me show you something that's pretty interesting. I could take basically two-thirds of an inch off the back, measured along this line. So it's a little bit less. It's like 625 in straight, 0.625 inches vertically off of this frame. And then, let me show you how I calculate that really quick. And then use a P10C backstrap, which totally fits, by the way. Okay, that's basically, like if you measure it along the line, it's about 2/3 of an inch. If you measure it vertically, it's 625, give or take. Cut that off the bottom of the frame. Run a P10C backstrap up. It's going to fit, like it's going to hit in the middle of these rails, so I could still drill a pinhole through there to pin this thing in place, and then maybe use some sort of epoxy. I haven't figured out what to use on this part yet, but to reinvent this kick out wherever the cutoff is, and essentially have a P10 SC in 45 auto. Yes, I would have to cut down my frames, right? My magazine bodies by the same distance, and then still keeping 2 millimeters of a wing here that I could, bend out and use to seat the base plate, right? But I don't think that's totally undoable either, right? Like I'm tempted now to convert this thing into essentially a P10 SC in 45. If you don't know, a P10 SC is just a F slide on a C frame. I have one, I just don't have it handy right now. But that's a 9mm only experience. In fact, that's the only, if they made a P10C in 45 auto, that would be in here right now. But it's not. They don't make one. I doubt they will. I mean, 45 is just not that popular anymore, right? Okay, so that's what's going through my head right now. But before we get there, before I talk about before I do any more thinking about how I'm going to solve that particular problem, if I decide to go that route, I have to resolve the sort of general inaccuracy I've been having with this. Now, I'm not condemning the firearm, right? Let me be clear. I have no reason as of yet to suspect the firearm itself is not an accurate machine. Every CZ I've ever picked up has shot whatever I pointed it at, whatever I pointed at, whenever I pointed it at it. It's hard to say. Basically, every CZ I've ever owned has been an accurate machine. No exceptions. But to be honest with you, I haven't had a real tough time with buying firearms that were inaccurate, right? So when I say CZs have always been super accurate, that's true, but I mean, that's kind of a basic expectation at this point. But on this one in particular, it just so happens that I've made this transition over to this platform at the same time, right? At the same time that I've decided to try maintaining a target focus for my iron-sighted shooting. And what I found was this traditional 3-dot white sight without any contrast between the front and rears was really destabilizing for my sight picture, right? I say sight picture, let me correct that. My shot picture, right? Because that's what I'm trying to call it, right? I'm looking for an acceptable shot picture, not a sight picture. And so this is just too distracting for me. It was messing me up. It was bringing me back into my sights when I was trying to focus on the target. And discipline issue, practice, yeah. But I don't want to overcome things. I don't want to fight to overcome things that I can fix with a simple sight switch. So I decided to put on a high contrast pair, and I took a night vision front sight from one of my CZ P10 SC sets. And I originally tried to take a Trijicon set off of this gun, and I ended up breaking the Trijicon front sight in the process, so that was a no-go. But I thought I would take the front sight off of a night vision set that I had laying around for a P10C build that will be coming up shortly, and then try this is a CZ custom part, 10305. Which is what I consider to be a pretty elegant black rear sight. It's got a nice little edge on it. But I like this sight, right? So I thought I would use that. The problem with that solution was that this sight needs a 6.5 millimeter tall front sight. This is like just under 5.5. That 1 millimeter difference made almost no difference point shooting and inside 7 yards. I say point shooting, but that sort of larger sight picture or shot picture. I'm gonna struggle with this. But at distance, as distance stretched out, I was centering this sight on the safe table before the match, right? Like I put the sights on the night before the match, and I got them out in the sunlight. I was like, oh yeah, that's not lined up right. And so I was like making adjustments on the safe table to the sight, loosening up the screw, banging on it with my knife. At the hilt of my knife to try and move it. It was folded, but still, like using a knife as a hammer to try and get this thing lined up straight, day of match, right? And then only to find out later that and it was much later actually, that the height, it was way too late, that the height of this rear sight was too high for that front sight post. So what I'm doing tonight is taking the other part of that night vision set, this U-notch rear, fitting it for this slide. Now, what fitting it, you say? So, I don't have dog hairs in there. When I go to put a rear sight on a slide, a P10 slide, I like the sight to glide in just past the set screw. Like I need this to be over another couple millimeters. And typically, most sights that I put on a P10 have to be fit. And I do that by using my knife sharpener, the core stone initially, to try and pull enough material off here that I can slide this thing on enough to clear the set screw, right? Once it gets that far, then I'll tap it in with a brass, brass punch and get it to what I try to identify as mechanical center, right? From there, I'll take it to the range, do some sighting if it's not the night before a match. And if it's good, I'll Loctite it in position. If it's not, I'll adjust it at the range. I don't know what I've talked about. I've been talking for 20 minutes. But So that's where we're at. I'm going to put the sight on. I'm going to do that here in a second. And then I'm going to validate that the thing is mechanically accurate, as mechanically accurate as I needed to be, that the sight picture is working for me to maintain a target focus under fairly aggressive shooting. And if both of those things are true, and I can be accurate with this thing at speed, given the fact that it's a 45, obviously a little bit different experience recoil-wise, then I'll probably just go with that for the short term and rep out and see if I can't rep out the reload issues that I'm having. But in the back of my head is, but you bring the Dremel to the game, can make the world's first P10 SC. It may not be the first one, but it's the first one I've heard of. Make the first P10 SC 45 and see how that goes. Because cutting, like I was saying, cutting this thing down to P10C size may very well let me throw the X300 light on and then run this thing from appendix too. So there's a lot of other things to gain by being able to chop this down a little bit. Right now, I'm using a Safariland GL for whatever the number is. It's their ProFit line where you can get like, a whole bunch of firearms into the holster by just adjusting the set screw at the bottom, and it's got that GLS, tab that just kind of interrupts your grip, but retains it. And man, I am not used to that. So that's another problem, right? My draws are a little bit iffy. Look at that. My draws are a little bit iffy, and my reloads are iffy. So I'm struggling with both those things. And I hate that holster with a passion. I don't even want to get good at it. But it serves a purpose. So that's where I'm at. And that's why on P10C Talk, we're talking about a CZ P10F. Until we talk again, stay safe, shoot straight, and I'll see you at the range.